Good afternoon. My name is Farai Mwashita, and I'm the Vice Chair of the ACE Emerging Professionals London and South East Committee. In my day job, I'm an International Project Engineer at CBRE Global Workstream Solutions. Welcome to this ACE Emerging Professionals webinar, organized by the London and South East Group. And to celebrate International Women's Engineering Day, which is today, we are going to have a discussion centered around the pandemic, women, and how it's affected women in the workplace. For this discussion, I'm joined by a great panel, and I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves to the audience. Thank you so much for joining. We will have a set of questions that the panel will answer, and there is a chat box where you can send your questions and we will answer those towards at the end of the discussion. Thank you all for joining, and I will now introduce you to the panel. So first off, we've got Stacey Peel, Global Leader of Aviation Security from Arup.
Hi, Farai. Thanks for having me here today.
So Stacy, do you mind just introducing yourself briefly about your role at Arup and what you do in your day job at Arup?
Yeah, so I actually wear two hats in Arup at the moment. I'm leading Arup's operations consulting business for the Ukimia region. So we work in a range of industries, including aviation, which is my personal background, primarily in operational excellence and people and change. And within my aviation security role, I lead our global business for that. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for making time. The next one, we've got Marie-Louise. Marie-Louise, do you mind introducing yourself?
Certainly. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Marie-Louise Schembri. I'm a design director at Hilson Moran, which is primarily an environmental design consultancy in the built environment. I am an environmental design engineer focusing on zero carbon. So a lot of what I do relates to sustainability in the built environment and achieving our net zero targets in the face of a climate emergency.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. The next guest that we have is Mara Makoni.
She fights to find the unmute button. Thanks, Farai. I'm Mara Makoni. I'm currently consultant at PA Consulting, and I am sort of sat in their complex systems group, and with a focus on transport, but with overall exposure to other markets like defense and security. I have been in this role only for about 3 months, and prior to that, I was primarily focused in transport, in intelligent transport. And in another hat, I am also a corporate partnerships lead for the Association of Black and Minority Ethnic Engineers. So I sit on that exec board, so sort of where one sort of specialization in diversity inclusion, and also as an engineer, I suppose, / management consultant within PA.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, we've got Ayo Sokale.
Thank you, Farah. Yes, so really pleased to be here, and thank you for the invitation again. I'm Ayo Sokale. I'm a chartered civil engineer, and I work at the Environment Agency. My role is in project management. Primarily, that means I'm delivering schemes that benefit people, reduce their risk of flooding, and also in the water resources sector. That's basically what we do at the Environment Agency. We do everything to benefit people and wildlife, and I'm really proud of the work we do there. Prior to just being project management, I'd also been BIM lead for the Eastern Hub. And if anyone's really familiar with BIM, that's on building information modeling, but I like to call it better information management and improving our industry through that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies. So in terms of betterment, making things better, empowering engineers, solving problems for tomorrow, let's get into our panel discussion. So the first question is, the pandemic in itself. How has the pandemic affected women, both in a negative and positive way? And this can be centered around the observations you've made over the past 12 months or your personal experiences. So I'll start over to you, Stacey.
Thanks, Farai. I think for me, I'll start with my own personal experience. Certainly a positive of the pandemic has meant that I've brought in some diversity in my career. The last 15 years of my career has focused exclusively on the aviation sector. And we all know what's happened to the aviation sector since the pandemic. So like all good consultancy, we bring in diversity to the work that we do, and Arup provides those fantastic opportunities. So for me, it's given me an opportunity to be working in some other industries that I perhaps would not have done otherwise. I think for some of the observations that I'm seeing with women that I work with and work with either directly or within the industry is that the opportunity of working at home has allowed people to spend more time with their families that they wouldn't otherwise have done so. But I think the interesting aspect to that, and perhaps one of the downsides, and something that I've found quite confronting in preparing for today, is that I've learnt that women are doing an additional 6.1 hours of work at home a day as a result of the pandemic. Now that's of course unpaid work and is not sort of actively contributing to the economy. We're seeing a lot of women leaving the workforce as a direct result of the pandemic, or more likely to be furloughed than men. So these are definitely negatives and a negative impact on women. I think the other thing for me personally that's been a negative is I've seen a lot of really, really good people, including women, leaving the aviation sector. There's been massive downsizing in the sector. And I think we'll see a lot of those people never return to the sector as well. So I do have concerns about knowledge management, skill retention within the sector. So that in turn does provide some opportunities for bringing diversity, disruption, creativity, perhaps addressing some of the longer term challenges that the sector has been grappling with and is now really focused, and the carbon agenda is a really good example of that. So definitely some positives, a lot of negatives, particularly impact on women, but every cloud has a silver lining, and it's also brought a lot of opportunities as well.
Those are some interesting facts and figures that even I wasn't aware about. So we're going to have a lot of discussion around that towards the end. Over to you, Marie-Louise.
Yes, certainly, and I think I can support those figures. The figures I came across in my preparation was that 39% of women serve the global workforce, but about 54% of unemployment as a result of the pandemic were women. So it just goes to show the disproportion. So sorry, I started with a negative instead of the positive, I suppose, but I've also experienced a lot of, especially young parents, especially young women, leave the industry, which is, it's an unfortunate situation, but it reflects, well, like any large event, on this level especially, parts of society that's already at a disadvantage will suffer more, and parts of society that have an advantage will benefit, and it's not entirely black and white, of course, and it's not fair to put that blanket statement across the board, but it is very evident from at least even my local community that's been happening, and I've seen a lot of young women decide to put a break on their career because they couldn't manage those extra hours in the day, in the work-life balance that's not really balanced, but just more pressure on them, on their personal lives. I would say on a personal level, I think for people in the sustainability sector, in the environmental sector, and perhaps Ayo has a similar experience, sustainability has increased in importance following the protests that went on from summer of 2018 through to the global climax of protests for the climate emergency in the summer of 2019. And therefore, the skill that I decided a long time ago that I want to pursue is suddenly in high demand, and it feels like a privilege. And I know a lot of people who are leading in the sustainability space are women. I know a lot of heads of sustainability who are women out there, which is great. So they're benefiting from this too. So there's a very career specific advantage. It's a coincidence that this all happened before the pandemic, but I guess instead of the pandemic slowing that down in 2020, what it seems to have done is given people time to reflect, and it's increased social and environmental awareness of people. So it's actually picked up and accelerated, which I guess is a positive take amongst a few others, of course, but that's what I would say, the way it affected my career personally.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Marie-Louise. Mara, your take on my first question?
I mean, personally, it really has been quite an interesting year for me because, I mean, minus all the just, from a sort of family and nuclear sort of impact of COVID and all of that, I had to live through waking up to an email saying, "Ooh, your job is at risk." And living through that and thinking, well, what does that mean? And really starting to really reevaluate your career choices. And also because I had actually been put on furlough, and and at that point, I think I attributed it to, I just rolled off a project, and my sort of utilization and all that stuff hadn't been really well configured, because the minute I got put on it, I was literally yanked back out. Like, oh yeah, we just but from that moment, and I think I started to contextualize this in my own personal context, like this pandemic is really it's forcing me to rethink. And it was even when I'm trying to get out and think, what does my next step look like? Like, what does my next venture out look like? Do I just want a job for the sake of getting a job? Because the option there wasn't, we are absolutely kicking you out of the company. We are actually just deciding we might need to replace you somewhere. Which you then go, do I just accept that everybody's going through a shitty time? Having a job for having a job is the way forward. Or is this a shake from the universe? Had to go out there and really now start to ask yourself, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? So I think it was a very tough moment. It was a very tough moment. I then sort of settled for reconfiguring somewhere else in the business, where I thought actually turned out to be a very fantastic time. But it also was a time when PA came knocking. Opportunity to work with PA came, and you start, and I think when I looked at myself, I can think of 3 moments in my career when I've literally gone for an opportunity because I thought, this is it. This is really where I would want to be. It's not just somebody coming in and say, well, I'm paying you more, I'm giving you a different job, I'm saving you out of this opportunity. But it literally, when I remember even interviewing for this job and just thinking, I just met people that I would want to have at a dinner party as a show and tell, right? I want to show the world, these are the people that are doing some cool stuff out there. So I think, the pandemic for me brought a lot of anxiety. It really did, because at that moment you had to rethink your career. You had to think about, wait, what if I just opt to take redundancy here? And what can find a little new job, but I've got a little pocket money here, but what if I but it was a lot of anxiety, but it allowed me to start to really focus on things like, how do I get mentoring? How do I get a coach who's going to walk me through this? And how do I get, and starting to really I called it intentional career focus of being intentional about everything I did. I address myself as being Black, I address myself as being a woman, and I address myself as being young. What are these things? Intentional in the most intentional way. And I threw everything, and I decided when I go for PA, when I get into PA, I go in and I'm going to dedicate my everything that I brought to the table. I'm going to bring everything that I have to the table around this, understanding these challenges, because it was a very harsh time of really understanding some of your limitations and all of that. It was also the time when George Floyd, the unfortunate incident of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter happened. So when you bring all of this together, the intersectionality around who I was, suddenly I had to now think, go out there, be a Black woman, face the challenges, and then bring yourself and be intentional about driving a career. So that's what the pandemic has done for me from a personal level. And I think, there were onboarding. I've only been to the office like 3 times. It was actually funny because I went to the office last week and I met 2 of my colleagues, and I was like, oh, you're shorter than I thought, actually.
Yeah, that's gonna be me when I finally join going to my office. I think they're all expecting someone.
There have been those sort of cute little moments that you walk into the office and you're like, oh, I didn't know you're that short. And everybody's like, gosh, you're tall. But yes, there's a
wonderful. So your experience is filled with a lot of ups and downs, silver linings, having to readjust and adapt. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mara. And last but not least, Ayo, your experiences and the impacts that you faced over the last year.
So I'll start with some larger perspectives and things I've observed. So I've kind of observed on the various levels of where people are in their career, how they've been affected that way. I felt some graduates have kind of lost out on being able to get clear training, clear opportunities. I think a lot of that kind of development happens by accident in the office, by proximity, and that not being intentional in the shift from office working to virtual working. I felt some of them kind of lost the benefits of just being in the office there. And obviously for new starters meeting teams, so they're working with teams that they've never actually met, I thought that made it kind of more challenging in terms of understand expectation management. Everyone's working flexibly. When are you working? Are you contactable all the time, especially new organizations? And then obviously reading team cultures, because I think those things are tougher to do virtually. I thought, so graduate level, new starters, those are my observations on how people are faring in that way. But I think also mid-level, you're kind of halfway through your career, or in a decent spot. You're kind of looking for your next opportunity. I think a lot of people felt safe in either they had safety in their role and that meant they weren't going to move, or they didn't have safety and that was catalyst to make change. So I think we had like quite, polarized of experience on that level, I think, and watching people. Are they going to stagnate their career because they're not sure what to do? After all, people have mortgages and rent to pay, or are they going to take big risks? So that was interesting to observe. I also observed, with my colleagues in the way we would talk in team meetings, it reinforced gender roles about who was doing what, like how are your children? We asked more about people who female or identified as females with those questions. It was very different. And I think reinforced some of those gender parity things. And I know the UN and the McKinsey report talks about how women's jobs are more vulnerable in the pandemic. Maybe not in our industry, in the same cell, the wider industries that are in the world where hospitality or more front-facing or care. But I still think, things that women did had been affected more. Women then started doing more unpaid labor. In fact, it was statistically found that girls and women were doing 66% more, the age group of 16 to 24. So, it really did have all these huge impacts on gender roles and some of the equalities that people have fought so hard to gain. In fact, I think the McKinsey report said it's pushing us back 10 years. So, we have all those drastic stats and so on. But on a positive level, on my personal experience, I found it, quite useful. Taking that step back, the year allowed me to be authentic about who I am. This is the year I came out as autistic, which is something that is a huge part of my identity. But it's something that in the office or in the wide world I'd masked, but not having to waste or use so much energy masking in the workplace and all the other cues that they do take a lot of energy if they're not intrinsic to your own neurotype. I had that time, I had that bandwidth back to explore and to think and to be more myself. So in the pandemic, the lesson I've learned is actually the ability to reflect and to be authentic. which is something that maybe I didn't have prior to the pandemic. So, you know, we've all had varying experiences, varying on where we are in our career, from new starters to grads to mid-level, or if your job's been at risk or not. But my personal reflection is I've been able to take a step back from having to put on the mask that we all wear, maybe not just as autistic people, but as people in the world, and take that time back to redefine who I am on my terms and work in a way that actually facilitates me working on my zenith potential. So that's been my personal thoughts on the pandemic.
Oh, that's really wonderful. Thank you very much. And a lovely segue into our next question, which is about lessons learned. So you've all given your experiences about observation, your personal experience over the past year. So in the past year, I'm sure we've all had to adapt, we've all had to learn from working from home. What would you say are the lessons learned that you've learned over the past year? And just to shuffle up things a little bit, I'm gonna start with Marie-Louise.
Caught me by surprise. I had the rhythm in my head.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. Lessons learned. Yes, I mean, I think that one of the, every time this question has been asked, of course, over the year and a half, and you know, even in casual conversations with friends, what do you think is going to stick with us from all of these changes? And of course, it's been in my sector, it's been a very big conversation around workspace, but that's a conversation that everybody's having for personal reasons and personal adjustments. But one of the things that I really appreciate from the past year and a half is that there seems to be sort of a heightened and widespread empathy. People have a better understanding of individual needs more than ever before. You know, I experienced it as a young parent. I've got a 5-year-old daughter, and there was a lot of flexibility around my availability at the time when I was homeschooling and working very long hours to catch up at night, and you know, somehow we got through that. And I'm lucky to have had help in that space, because we're 2 people looking after 1 child. But you know, it could have been even harder. But this empathy has made its way, I think, into the way employers are approaching staff. There's a lot more outreach, questionnaires, what works for you. There's also a feeling that if businesses haven't changed in this way and have shown lack of trust during the pandemic, for example, or shown lack of flexibility, and they are more likely to lose staff. And I haven't seen the statistic, but I do have a lot of conversations with peers who have been unhappy because that sort of lack of sensitivity to their personal situation has been lacking in the conversations with their employer, and have moved on because of that reason. So it's, you know, anecdotally I've seen it. I'm sure there's some statistics there that have been gathered to prove that, to back that up. And I think the lesson learned is, I think that's one of the things I hope that we keep, and I'm sure a lot of businesses are making changes in the long term in the way they operate, which is really positive to see. And you know, you just need to keep things going both ways. One of the final points I probably make is, more recently, as it became clear that with graduates started coming in again, that the new wave of graduates, how important being around them in person is. And if, you know, for people perhaps in a later stage of their career who are more comfortable working from home because they don't have the space deficiencies that, you know, a student who's just starting to live in a city may have, and starting a new job may have, everyone needs to get out of their comfort zone a little bit as well. I'm sure there's a lot of lifestyle adaptation, and it's really positive to hear conversations about flexible hours rather than flexible days, because, you know, it's not so black and white. Life is complex, but it's really important to for people who are in late stages of career to be learning from and sitting alongside people who are in the early stages of careers, and, you know, not doing that remotely and not doing that on screen if possible. You know, exceptions there will be, but if possible, I think that we need to keep that going. It's key to learning and development, and for future generations of engineers, especially. Of everything, but yes, let's talk about engineers. Definitely key vital parts of the engineering field.
Thank you so much. Yeah, very important message there about just being empathetic and understanding of people's situations. Like I say, especially if you've got children, you have to homeschool, balance that, and meet deadlines. That's a very important message there. Stacy, your comments or lessons learned from the past year?
Yeah, I think very much along the same lines as what Marie-Louise talked about is around flexibility, the value that flexibility and diversity can bring to the situation. I used to travel a lot for work, and that took me away from the office, but it also took me away from communication with the team. Yes, I sit in front of a laptop every day, Microsoft Teams meeting after Microsoft Teams meeting, but I'm getting access to people that I wouldn't ordinarily have been working with under a normal sort of office-based environment. I do take Marie-Louise's point of the importance of actually physically working with people, but the door is now open so that the type of remote working has facilitated that. I think the other thing around flexibility is opening your mind to diversity. A lot of organisations are doing a lot of work around equality, diversity and inclusivity, but actually this has forced us and me in particular to open my mind even more to that. And I think a really, really practical example of that is in our recruitment process. You know, we engage people with particular skills. Now, because people have had to be more agile, the workforce is changing, people are much more mobile with their jobs at the moment, be that their choice or otherwise, as Mara talked about from her experience. I look at CVs quite differently now. I'm much, much more open and much more flexible, and I look for how we can create opportunities to transfer skills. So without a doubt, lesson learned is the value of flexibility and diversity.
Thank you so much. And Mara, your lessons learned from the past year?
I think I agree with what's been said, particularly what Marie-Louise was saying, that I think for the first time you start to see the human behind some of your colleague. And because, you know, we used to turn up in the office and let's say, you know, Jane turns up 5 minutes late, you're like, oh crap, she's always late. But, you know, starting to sometimes when you even hear the dog barking off in the background, and that gives context to somebody's life, you know. And sometimes what we thought were negative attributes to a human where other things that I just understanding they're also a mother or father or somebody in a different situation that has also had to turn up and be themselves to work. So you can't always expect that when I land on the camera, I'm going to be like, you know. So I think that was an important lesson, that there's somebody is very quiet, somebody is very moody, somebody's always late. It's just understanding that there's so many things that happen, that, you know, a person could be a mother of 10, a person could be a father of 50, you know, a person could be a carer to 25 relatives, or just have a lot going on in their lives, that sometimes what we see is just a byproduct of other things that are happening in their lives, and willing to accept that and to be accommodating, that actually I can have a call with somebody sitting on their lap. I think if pre-pandemic, if somebody tried this person, it would have been deemed the most unprofessional thing to do. You know, when your daughter just comes running past, or, you know, suddenly your builder knocks on the door, you'd have had to come up with 25 million excuses to explain why that was happening, when you just need to open the door to collect a parcel. So I think it made us more humane and in touch, and it actually made us feel more connected to colleagues. But I think the other thing for me was just flipping on the other side of what Marie-Louise, you know, she was talking about experience as a mother, but I think the other thing that it also did to me, sometimes to a certain extent I was overlooked, you know, because sometimes when you're not a mother, you're not a wife, you know, so when somebody, you know, or a father rather, when you turn up to a call and you just go, I'm stressed, and everybody goes like, you don't have kids, why are you stressed? And it's like, well, there are things in my life that are going to actually stress me. So sometimes sometimes I felt like I was being overlooked because there were other things that were happening to me, you know, things like just from a cultural perspective. I have, in my culture, I'm Zimbabwean. I've got a strong sense of sensibility, as a strong sense of responsibility of looking after my mom and her welfare and all of that stuff. So when she gets COVID, even extended family is becomes part of. It's not even extended; they're actually your family. So things like that, when the responsibility, when people are dying and people are sick, that was me trying to cope in every call. And sometimes when you turn up and people are like, oh no, God, yeah, I'm homeschooling. Yeah, like you for you're single. So, but I also have things like there were moments when I was just like, I'm struggling, really. Like I'm really struggling, but not having that stereotype of what we've built to be the sort of things that must the only. So but again, it was less like it's a cultural thing where certain cultures, when I say my uncle is sick and that worries me, certain cultures are not as close to extended families and all of that stuff. So it was a lesson learned on how to articulate some of these things. So sometimes when I just go on a call, my uncle has died and people are like, oh, sorry about that. And you're trying to explain, I'm actually at the top of running, planning this funeral because of how my culture works. So I think what it did is help me to actually sometimes step back and really have to enforce. This is a big thing for me, this is quite close to me. This is something I actually have to, this is something I could not sleep over, certain nuances that come with my own culture and who I was as a person, having to explain that in the workplace, that these are things that actually affect me more because of just how my culture has been set, being a Zimbabwean and whatnot, and how that manifests around me. And sometimes having to say, no, actually, this is breaking point. Like I'm breaking.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Ayo, your lessons learned.
Thank you. I agree with everything that's been said. I think the major lessons learned has been, we started talking about mental health, but I think we do need to probably live some of those things now. I'm glad that it's brought some people more humanity, but I do think that we do need to drive to actually take some of those actions on board. We all need to do personal work to be more inclusive and diverse. And I think that comes under that well-being and that mental health part of a holistic person. People are so much more than the job that they do. And often I think historically we have only thought about work and our colleagues in that way. And maybe this will help us in the future. But I think we're embarking on that journey. I think it's a start of it. And the key lesson now is actually we still need to do a lot of work. We need to do a lot of work around that. And I think we need to do a lot of work about, when we're having some of these really challenging conversations that we've been having in light of the year. Maria mentioned, George Floyd's death last year, and we still all need to have more education around these things so we can deal with tough conversations. And us as engineers who are so involved in communities, either in infrastructure projects, delivering them and engaging with them on a stakeholder level, we do need to be more equipped and more conscious about communities that we serve, and understand the issues that are pertinent to them. So we also need to do a lot of work and educate ourselves and be aware and be less fragile and defensive about maybe when we get challenged on these things, because we all want to think of ourselves as really good people, and that's good. But often when we're so attached to a sense of our identity, we can't see anything that doesn't quite validate that reality. And sometimes, yes, you can be a good person, but actually what you just said is a bit racist or a bit homophobic or a bit ableist. And it's not about labeling or shaming people, but it's about helping people go on that individual journey. So my lesson learned is we've got a lot of work to do in those spheres, and taking personal accountability, but also organizations doing the work to let their culture, their branding, their propaganda reflect in the real lived realities of every member of staff.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and I endorse your statements and everything you've said. And I'll probably say for me, one of the biggest lessons I learned is having a good work-life balance. Because I think at the beginning of working from home, I really didn't balance my time. I would find myself still working away until 9 p.m. and maybe just allowing myself to have a 20 to 30 minute break, which is, I would never do that in the office. I'll walk to the kitchen, make a cup of tea, talk to a colleague, have a proper hour lunch break. But working from home, it took me, I'll probably say 3 months to really allow myself to have a break from the computer like I would do in the office. But thank you very much. And I think the biggest one that everyone is discussing, whether it's social circles or work, it's when things go back to normal, what is normal? And that leads me to my next question, the future of the workplace. We were all used to be crammed in our offices, no space, people hovering around your desk. What do we think the future of the workplace looks like? And I'm going to start with you, Ayo, because you're on my screen. I know.
God, that is such a tough question. I always look at doing a lot of research and prep for this. And honestly, there seem to be so many conflicting opinions. Some people want to get back because they need the opportunities. They feel that without being present in the office and being seen to do what they do, that there won't be opportunities for progression. But I have a counterpoint of view. I think maybe we focus too much on being present and on outcomes, or the product of people's work. And I think maybe one of the key things that the lesson learned from this kind of pandemic and the changing work style is, I think the economists talked about this. People aren't working shorter hours, they're working longer hours. And maybe they're fitting it around their lives better, but they are working a lot more. And companies have benefited in a way that they would never have in the past. In the past, I don't know if you would have stayed in the office till 9 if you knew that you had to get home at the end of it. So I think the boundaries of what work looks like and working times, we have to have a think about that. And organizations need to, really understand that they have gained a benefit from this pandemic. They've gained more work, more output from their staff. So as they shift back, it shouldn't be mandated. It should be on personal circumstance or all the other nuanced issues that will affect people wanting to go back to the workplace full time or in whatever capacity. So that needs to be had. These conversations need to be had. Business needs to be met, but we also have to think about the individuals that work for us. So I think that's a topic that we need to think about. When we think about barriers that will be reinstated when people go back to the office, because obviously so many people have gained benefits. The pandemic's been hard, but some people have gained more time with their children. Some people are home for bath time that they wouldn't have been because of commuting time. So we need to think about the barriers that people are going to feel reinstated, and how maybe we can work with people to get them that life balance, because it's not just work-life balance. People have so many things that they have to do as a person, so many demands and responsibility, and the world of work is an important part of that identity. It isn't all that a person is, and maybe we need to think about that as well. What barriers come back when we go back to the office, and how we can mitigate some of that. And I think I'll end on the point of maybe we do go back to the office 100%, and maybe we don't. But I think it needs to be pragmatic, and needs to be dealt with talking with unions and employees. I think the biggest mistake I think any organization can make is making a decision, totalitarian one, that this is what's doing, by tomorrow you're coming back. And I think we've seen that in the press. Some organizations say, get back in the office. You can go to a restaurant, you can go to the office. And I think in the world where people are more aware about the brevity of life, the extremes of life, people have lost a lot of people in the last year, not just old but young, and different phases of life. I don't think people will stand for that anymore. And the organizations that will thrive and will have the most diverse, brilliant, talented staff are the ones who put people at the heart of them, because people will work for them and they will be proud too. It's like when I talk about the Environment Agency, what we do is benefits wildlife and people. The people will be proud to work for that. They will think that it matters, and that's what's going to make a change if in the future of work. If you're going to be a leader, a global leader, as an organization, you've got to put people at the heart of it. And these conversations have to be in partnership, and they cannot be dictated down. So I think those are my thoughts on how the world of work may look, or what we need to do to go back to the world of work as we did in the past.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And continuing in reverse order, Mara, what do you think the future of the workplace looks like?
It comes back to one of the benefits of the pandemic, really. And I used to have, especially from a diversity perspective, this thing around presenteeism, that there's no longer that feeling like I can actually tie my career progression to how many times I joined a team outing to the pub, and what it means to other people who perhaps for religious purposes or for cultural purposes do not want to go to the pub. They do not. And certain styles of people that I just want to be a technical person. I want to focus on that. So I think it's opened up a new level, perhaps a different way of evaluating people's performance. And I think I applaud companies that truly embrace flexibility, because one thing to say we're very flexible, and then and only for it to come across as a test to see, oh, who really wants to come to the offices? You know, you're going to give all the brownie points to whoever decides, you know, and they're going to commit to come to the offices. I think it opened up a different way of evaluation. I think that perhaps is more equitable across the board, because I think certainly looking at it from a diversity with a diversity lens, that sort of office presence had actually started to, it actually can manifest certain behaviors that are actually not as inclusive.
Mara, I think Mara's frozen a bit there.
Oh, am I frozen?
Yeah, you're back now. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it just opened that space a bit more. So you've got people who work part-time that are not as engaged in the office life, you know, literally coming in as, you know, as a parent or whatever, to just come in, do 9 to 3 and you want to rush out. So I think it actually really opened. So I think that opening it up, so because even you've got, I work in like, where we contract to like military of defense, for example. So before you'd actually to be like, no, everybody's got to be at work because we're dealing with sensitive stuff. But when the pandemic hit, it was like, we've got our people, you know, they found ways to adapt with remote working. So if people that are mission critical with very sensitive information around our nation's welfare can find ways to adapt by working from home and making it work for everybody, I think everybody can, really. You know,
wonderful. Thank you very much. Marie-Louise, your take on the future of the workplace.
Yes, I mean, we've all been, I think a lot of employers are trying to figure out ways to survey and adapt and flexible working and book a desk and that sort of thing, and digitalizing the process. I think we need to be careful to understand that we're going into something very new again. We're not going back to what it was before, of course. It's going to be a new experience again. We're going to be learning all over again what works and what doesn't in a hybrid situation. So it doesn't stop on the day that we all go back, part time or part from the office, part of the office, part from home. There are a lot of nuances around being able to find the quiet space when you have one meeting a day, but you need to stick to your desk, and you know, a lot of little things like that we have to think and experience before we get it right. And I suppose a lot of what I'm seeing as well is staff is being surveyed. It doesn't stop there, I guess, linking to what Ayo said before, with the equality and diversity agenda being translated into real action in the workplace. The staff we survey is limited by the lack of diversity in the workspace, if it is lacking in diversity. So that survey, the results of one survey, needs to be updated and revisited over time, because hopefully we are going to be addressing some of the lack of diversity in our workspace. It's something that we've now acknowledged and are taking actions to address. Therefore, what we think is, you know, a right work-life balance today may not work for different cultures, for different communities, etc. So it's an evolving beast, and we need to, you know, in 5 years' time we might get it right, I think, but in the first instance we won't. And if until the time that we are having, say, meetings partly from home and partly from an office space, those issues that we were talking about earlier around people who are starting the career, one of the things that was observed is that younger staff or new staff in a career, or even just people who have changed career and are new to an audience, perhaps don't have the maturity or the experience in a particular circle, find it harder to voice their opinion in meetings, especially when they're online. It's very different, or find it hard to read the people around them. I think it was someone here who pointed that out in an earlier conversation. And perhaps we could acknowledge the information that we have gathered from the more humane issues that we have experienced during the pandemic to teach us to new protocols on meetings, such as to allocate time before in an agenda for younger staff, or to call them in advance of a meeting and have a conversation. You know, just be a little bit more, actually do take on the lessons learned, and not just switch back to the office and expect things to fall into place quite quickly. That's my take on it.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Stacey, your take on the future of the workplace.
I think my view of the future of the workplace, I mean, some of that's based on what we're experiencing with Arup ourselves as an organisation, but also some of the work that we're doing with clients about helping them design their future workspace. I think a lot of what everybody else has said, there's two elements to it. It's the policies that organisations put in place to optimise a lot of the benefits that have come from the pandemic. And a good example of that is Arup has just released our Work Unbound program, which is based on working flexibly, both geographically, but with the hours that we work. So meeting the needs of our clients, optimising opportunities to be creative by working together, but also accommodating and making sure that we can create an environment where everybody can bring their whole self to work, be that barking dogs in the background or working differently to accommodate childcare or other relatives' care as well. I think the other element to it is around the space and the design. I think offices will no longer be just a place for convenience. They'll be a destination in and of themselves. Organisations are going to have to think about what the hybrid working environment looks like. So to give you an example, the majority of people in Arup worked 5 days a week in the office, but now with choice, and if they could accommodate it, they're looking to work on average about 2 days a week in the office, and that's not going to be the same 2 days. So how do we accommodate that hybrid working environment? How do we create opportunities for some of those serendipitous moments that result in creativity, exchange of ideas, problem solving, and also having a shared identity? A lot of organisations, I'm familiar with all of the organisations that our panellists come from, and all of them have a really rich and obvious culture and personalities. So how do we retain that with a hybrid working environment? So I think the space of offices, the physical space of the workplace is going to change considerably. It's accommodating flexibility in geography and hours, but also becoming a destination rather than just a place of convenience for work.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we're just going to ask the audience, if you've got any questions, please provide them in the chat. And whilst we're waiting for that, I've got a question, and this is to do with the future of the workplace and what it means. So a lot has been mentioned about people who are either changing careers or starting, graduates who are joining. And I've changed companies in a pandemic, and for me, I found it easy to meet up with my team and talk to them. So my question is around the point of, what is the advice that you would give to someone who is going to start a new job or a new career in this environment? Anyone can answer the question. It's not aimed at anyone, but Stacey, you're on my screen, so I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I think what remote working has allowed, I think it was Marie-Louise talked about, sometimes people's voices aren't heard when we're working in a virtual environment. It's interesting, in conversations I've had with colleagues, I've had some colleagues share that experience and give me first-hand examples of that. But equally, I've had other colleagues who have said, actually, it's a much more of an even playing field. So if the latter provides that opportunity, it's make your voice heard. I think a lot of the things that we talked about with empathy and getting insight into people's personal lives, I think that makes people more accessible. So if you're coming into a new organisation or just starting your professional career, optimise the opportunities by building networks and using some of that insight that you've got into people's lives to build your network. You can do it quite quickly and quite efficiently with a remote working environment. So I would actively encourage people to you know, exploit those opportunities.
Wonderful. Ladies, anyone would like to add on to that before I ask my second question?
I'll just add on to that before I have to leave. So I'll just say I do agree that there is value in that kind of online reaching out. I think people are very keen to support people in various stages of their career. I have a coach, I have mentors, you know, reach out and, you know, do your due diligence, know a bit about them, look at their CV, their LinkedIn. People love when you know stuff about them and you have really, you know, well-researched questions. And from that, you can build rapport. I was just reading Connect by, I think, Deborah Barber, but it's a really good book. And there are loads of books that you can use and utilize to kind of build that skill set. So it's all in your hands. Don't kind of self-defeat and take yourself out of the running. And just remember to make your skills and the things that you do explicit. There's nothing wrong in just saying, I do this, I'm good at this, and advocating for yourself. Because in this new world, you may need to. People aren't always looking at other people. They're in their own bubbles, and more so now. So do put across what you're good at and the value you've added and be very clear about that. And I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunities that come your way as a result. Thank you for having me, and bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ayo. Thank you very much. Thank you. And this is probably my last question, which is around, there was a lot of discussion around being burnout. And I think in the last year, people talked a lot about mental health awareness, looking after your well-being. And most of it was around mental health, because I think especially the last lockdown, a lot of people talked about how it was a struggle to be in a lockdown in winter. It would get light at 8 a.m. and get dark about 3:30. So from your experience, how have you guys managed to deal with those aspects of burnout and all mental health awareness? Marie-Louise?
I'll give it a go since I didn't answer your last question.
Yeah.
Mental health has been a very big topic in my community, in my family. A lot of people have been through some level of it. I don't think I've ever experienced so much conversation about it and openness about it. I'm maybe fortunate to live in a community where neighbors just knock on the door for a chat, and that has really helped when they could, of course, when we weren't self-isolating or having to stay apart. But there were some really good moments. And I guess personally, I've stayed in touch with friends remotely, physical exercise, eating well, you know, just basic things, having breaks, which took me, there were periods like where I didn't have that choice. But there are other times when, you know, I reflected on the fact that I was sitting down all day in front of a screen and how that must be affecting the way I think. And I started consciously moving away from that. Watering the plants, you know, at midday, if I'm not going to sit and eat for half an hour, it's not the kind of thing I would do. And making the best out of time off, weekends, taking personal time, finding headspace. My headspace used to be my train time on a daily basis. I hadn't appreciated that until I stopped doing it. And therefore, you know, I just needed to make space for thinking about myself and looking after myself all over again. And it was a completely new way of doing it. So just don't forget yourself is my, yep.
Wonderful, such powerful words and really good advice. Don't forget yourself, and you should always make time for yourself. Thank you very much. And Mara, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, I just coped by using professional resources, because sometimes being in a technical career, just think that there's a calculator or something that you could just punch and, you know, there's always a logical thing to talk yourself out of a situation. But I think it was just being cognizant of whatever's happening to me is not even down to me, not manage myself. It's just the world is in a bad shape at the moment. And then who are the professionals, whether it's tapping into professional coaches to at least know somebody's got focused on helping you walk through your career, where there's actually accessing therapist in any form where there's absolute there, but just making sure that somebody else knows, somebody helps you navigate that time. And it takes away a lot of pressure of thinking whatever is happening to you is solely up to you, when we're all in just, you know, even the people that were trained to get companies and global companies out of this couldn't navigate. So it was being very honest that you were not in control of a lot of things, and leaving it sometimes to help people help you navigate out of certain situations.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure speaking to you all. Special thanks to our guests. And just to remind everyone that the webinar has been recorded and it will be shared to you in a day or so. Thank you all very much. And finally, we've got the Consultants and Engineering Awards organized by the ACE, and more details will follow on. So thank you all for joining. Thank you to our panel, to our audience. Thank you very much, and all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.